All right, boys, it's game day. Let's go. Let's go. Big game. Got a big game today. My package has arrived. Oh, sweet. Nice. Score! Great win, fellas. What game's next? G-men are having a great year. Let's go blue! Here we go. Prime time football. Texans, Dolphins. Let's do this. Yes! Review. Yes! Yes!
Heartland Flags. Every sport, every team, every flag.
Every team?
That's right.
Fine. I'll get a Washington flag too.
Find your flag and so much more with fast, free shipping. Heartlandflags.com. Every sport, every team, every flag. Almost.
Loyal sons forever true. Go Cyclones.
From the Channel Seed Studios, Nick Osen and Jake Brend talk all things Big 12. This is Firmly Entrenched, powered by Heartland Flags and Gifts. Every team, every sport, every flag. Almost. Here's Nick and Jake on Iowa Everywhere.
Welcome into the Channel Seed Studios. This is Iowa Everywhere's Firmly Entrenched. I'm Jake Brend with Local 5 Sports out of Des Moines, joined by my main man Nick Osen up there in Madison, Wisconsin. Not today, though, but works in Madison. Nick, how are we doing, my friend?
Jake, we're doing great. Yeah, kind of getting ready to be out east, covering a little Badgers hoops, and then we'll be making our way back to Madison. But we have got a loaded show, one that I know we've kind of been looking forward to, and even texting about in a group chat a little bit for 3 or 4 days now.
Oh, I can't wait. This is going to be a good show. We're, of course, going to recap the Cyclones after dark, winning over in Provo 45-13. Going to look ahead to Texas, their last trip to Jack Trice Stadium. Of course, always our Big 12 segment, sponsored by Circus Sports Iowa, and we'll close with some hoops. Nick, just before we talk about the game itself, how fun of a night was just that Saturday night, Sunday morning back here in the Midwest when the Cyclones were out west?
You know, that was, I could almost feel the excitement of, you know, friends like you and the fan base, the team. You could even kind of see it on social media. It was just, everything was so evident. You know, I was confident all week in what Iowa State was going to be able to do. We'll touch on a little bit maybe why that confidence wavered as we got closer to kickoff. But, you know, I think it was, you know, not only fun, but I just feel like it wasn't quite a statement game, but I think maybe a statement performance for the Cyclones and several of their top tier members.
Yeah, it was one of those wins that, I mean, it locks up everything, every goal that I think the staff had set. I mean, they haven't come out and said, you know what, the goal for this young team is to get to a bowl game. Certainly for the fans, I think if you told any fans preseason, you lose 5 starters, you play, what was it, 26 true freshmen 1 week. If you tell them a bowl game, everyone's signing up for it. So it's kind of that you can take a deep breath now, making a bowl game. And of course, that leaves 2 big games. But before we talk about, first point I want to hit is just the great job that Nate Scheelhaase did. Let's thank our friends at Heartland Flags and Gifts down there on 3719 Southwest 9th Street. Free shipping anywhere in Des Moines. Maybe Cyclone fans, if you went out to Provo, met a couple nice BYU fans that gave you some brownies and ice cream, maybe send them a BYU flag in the mail for Christmas or something like that. Seemed like really nice people out there in Provo. And maybe you just feel bad about going into their home stadium and beating them by 32 points. You can do that because it's free shipping anywhere in the U.S. New products constantly, every team, every sport, and every flag. Visit them in person or at Heartland Flags and Gifts, or sorry, just at heartlandflags.com. Nick, what a game from Nate Scheelhaase. I'll let you tackle this one.
Yeah, I know that. First off, I'll just touch on that. I want to just say it was pretty cool with some of those fans and kind of I don't even know how you describe kind of who did it, but I had a couple friends from Iowa State that went out to that game, and they were receiving ice cream treats and gifts and stuff in the visitor section, from what I could tell, based on their tweets. I thought that was really cool.
Wait, let me cut you off. Next year, I think I might buy a BYU shirt, not for like Iowa State BYU games, but during the Holy War, I'm all Cougars. The way that I saw Utah fans interacting with BYU fans on Twitter that night, making me mad. Saying that they're being tryhards for giving visiting fans ice cream and brownies. No, that's just being good hosts. Screw Utah, screw the Utes. I don't care. I'm a Cougar through and through that week next year.
Some might argue that they're even just being Midwestern nice, quite honestly,
yeah.
Which we love. Obviously both being from the Midwest. But for me, I wasn't surprised. I don't think you were surprised or really any of us that Iowa State's offense found so much success, because BYU, their defense has not been a strong point. Of course, on the road, even at home, they've gotten into a couple high scoring games, even if they won. But just the ease of which the Cyclones kind of produced some of those drives, it almost felt on a couple key third downs. I certainly think of the short, I think it was a 4-yard dish off to Jalen Knoll, and then obviously he did the rest for the score. It felt as if they were going against air sometimes. I don't think that any of us is really surprised about the early success from Coach Nate Scheelhaase. I think it was just a matter of, does it come game 1, game 3, game 6? And we have seen it pretty consistently from early on, but now it just feels like he is really in his spot. I think that he's got the full confidence and trust, obviously, of the staff, Coach Campbell, but of the players. And Jake, one thing that, we didn't even really write down, and it's not even necessarily my biggest point, but I'm not sure. I've only keyed in on this program, I guess, for 3.5 years, but I haven't seen many teams, whether it's Iowa State or just in the country, that it's so evident how close they are, and that type of chemistry and happiness for each other on the field, on the sidelines. I know we're going to get into a young player that had a really special game, but like when others score, whether they're in the same, room and position group or otherwise not, the excitement was just very visible from afar. And I think that's something that Coach Campbell and Iowa State have prided themselves on for several years. And now you're seeing it kind of as we're watching and taking in these games.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know the 2020 team was probably one of those, definitely the 2017 team. I think what makes this 23 team so unique, we've mentioned it so many times, the amount of youth. And when you have that many guys kind of coming in together, learning the offense together, you're going to be bonded more. Whereas past teams, last year you've got Xavier Hutchinson, who's played 2 years with this old quarterback, comes in with a new quarterback, new offensive. Not that there was bad chemistry. I'm not implying that, but it's just different when a lot of upperclassmen mixed with a lot of youth. Whereas, especially this offense, it's almost all youth. That's what's crazy is Easton Dean, he's a senior. Jalen Knoll, he's a junior. So I think you're onto something with just Matt Campbell finally has hit his goal from 2021 to be the most together team. But no, I'm glad that they hit their goal of going to a bowl game. Again, yeah, good performance from Scheelhaase. You pretty much tackled it. And I think what the benefits of Scheelhaase's game that he called was that the running backs all averaged 6 yards a carry. All of them scored. But in my opinion, one stood out almost a year to the date after a monster performance in the 5A state championship game against Valley. It's Abu Sama. He looked like every bit of a superstar on Saturday night.
Jake, I really couldn't agree more. So I'm sitting there watching that game after a long day, of work, covering the Badgers up in Madison. And I was texting with you and some Iowa State friends. And then the great Sean Roberts, a friend from Des Moines radio was texting me. Basically, he sent me a recording of what we kind of predicted, back in the summer for this team to happen. I've been speaking highly of Sama since March, before he got on campus. And I said that this Iowa State team would win at least 6 games. And I remember saying at least. I wrote it, I said it on the radio on this show. And I was just very proud, when I had that position of checking in, doing what I could with fall camp coverage, obviously recruiting. I knew Abu for a long time. And I wrote that he was the most talented running back in the state before he played a game. And that was not an insult to anybody else in the room, anybody for another program. It really wasn't. I mean, when you ask other people around the industry, like, I've got plenty of good things to say about, maybe a running back on Iowa or other players with Iowa State. I had said that very confidently about Abu Sama. I got a lot of flack for that. I got a lot of flack for saying that Iowa State would comfortably make a bowl.
Look
Check.
at where we are now.
That one is done. And I will even go ahead, my friend, to say I'm not a hot take guy. I'm not like that in my job on this show. But that run Saturday night, that first touchdown for Abu, you can't teach something like that. You really can't. I mean, that's something that probably less than 15 to 18 running backs in the country can do. Could freeze a guy, shift, juke, cut back the other way, and then sneak in for the end zone. I have seen enough. I know him enough, and just kind of how seriously he hones in and treats his craft. Jake, if he can stay healthy with Iowa State, continue to be developed by Matt Campbell, Nate Scheelhaase, these great guys with experience in running backs, not only will he be a pro, like I've said before, in 2 seasons, so 2.5 years, he will be drafted in the first 3 rounds of the NFL draft. You can book that, and you can take it to the bank. That's how impressed I've been with Abu Sama.
All right, Aiden, clip that. We'll check in 2.5 years, but I completely agree. Sama is incredible, and it's crazy that the staff really wanted him to be a defensive back. And I guess from my understanding, a lot of that changed after watching him against Valley last year. I was on the sideline for that game. I was on the camera. I think it was 372 yards, 6 touchdowns. I'd never seen a high school performance like that. My current roommate back when he played at Indianola ran for 394 yards in a game against Hoover. But that's in a game against Hoover, with all due respect, not the 5A state championship game. I've just got one last point I want to hit on, and this is way more big picture. Is this Matt Campbell's best coaching job?
That is such a good question. I think where I'm comfortable enough to go, and then I'll dish back to you because you've been more familiar for a longer time. I think it's comfortably top 2. I still think, even with all of the talent that a 2020 team had, or when he first kind of started the rebuild for the Cyclones, and so that would have been really 2017, kind of on that upward trajectory. I know you feel good about that season. I still think those deserve a lot of mention. But because of the off-the-field circumstances with the gambling situation, I don't want to make it seem more serious, than it was. It was the gambling thing, and just how much youth has played and found success. I think it's certainly up there. I would push back just a little bit, just because I think some of those games that many fans were maybe scared of, I think that some of those teams maybe weren't as good or legitimate as people thought. I don't know. I think that's probably a fair thing to say. And I certainly know, being around the program at the time, there was confidence around this roster. So that's why I can't say it for certain, but I think it's kind of your 1A, 1B type thing, my friend.
I'm going to say the same thing. I'm still going 2017 just because it was the first thing that hadn't really been done. You go on the road, you beat a top 5 team in Oklahoma, which typically in Iowa State, those are once-in-a-decade type wins. You beat Oklahoma State 2011, you beat Nebraska, and I want to say 94. Doesn't happen that often. But then they came back and they beat another top 5 team against TCU in Jack Trice Stadium, and they were the better team that day. They were clearly the better team and proved that they belong. I'm going to call it 1A. I'm going to call it 1-2 still. But these next 2 weeks especially can change my mind. I'll be honest, I'm kind of expecting 6-6. You're playing what I think are the 2 best teams in the conference, one at home, one on the road. If you get to 7-5, depending on how that looks, I'm willing to flip those just because of everything you said. The youth, the change after Ohio, in a way, it's the different side of the same coin to 2017. 2017, it was the defense that was the issue early on, and they made a midseason change that was truly unprecedented, changing an entire scheme. Like that doesn't happen. This year, kind of a similar thing against Ohio. Really changed the philosophy of how the offense played, focused more on utilizing weapons in space, and look where it's got them. And I will say that Iowa State still hasn't really beaten a good team. Other than you catch Oklahoma State at a pretty good time coming off of a massive loss to South Alabama, and before they rattle off like 4 or 5 wins in a row. So at this point, Iowa State's best win is still like a decent win. And that's the byproduct of a pretty down Big 12. I was thinking on my drive to the studio that this Big 12 football year kind of reminds me of a Big 10 basketball year. With all due respect to your Badgers. Feels like every year in the Big 10, a lot of these teams will go lose a couple bad non-conference games. They'll have 1 or 2 teams ranked going into conference play. And then all these mediocre teams will beat each other. And then the committee, the voters all convince themselves, oh my gosh, there's like 9 top 25 teams from the Big 10. And then they'll get 10 teams in the tournament, and one of them will make the Sweet 16. And we're like, oh, maybe we were right at the start. I think this might happen with the Big 12 this year, where they're going to get a lot of teams to 6 wins because a lot of the mediocre to good teams beat each other up. And I think they might struggle in bowl season. So long story short, if you go and beat Texas or K-State and get that signature win, I'm willing to move this to Campbell's best coaching job, but it's certainly close.
You're willing to move it even if they just get one of those, or do they need to get both?
I think if they get one of them, depending on how it is.
Okay.
I think so.
I've got a sneaky suspicion, no inside info here, but I think that Iowa State K-State game might end up being a night game there, just because I know that they're in the flex window right now. And so that could make things a little bit more difficult. Obviously, that's the advantage that the Cyclones have this week. As we're going to touch on right now, Texas comes to town.
Yeah, get that K-State game to 11 if Iowa State wants to win. But yeah, let's move on to Texas. We've got a night game. I know in our group chat, it was me, you, Aiden, Matthias, and Nate Scheelhaase burner. And I know that Matthias had been having a couple Steeple Ridge bourbons because he was going a little nuts in that group chat pregame. I think that's one of those things that just stays in there, not suited for kids or the public.
No.
But Matthias was a couple Steeple Ridge bourbons deep, just a high quality, delicious bourbon from Lonely Oak Distillery. And I mean, what else can you say about it? Just if you want to go get it, go to your local grocery store, your local liquor store. If they don't have it, request it. And if they do have it, you got to get it. Get the black label. That's the stronger one. That'll put the hair on your chest. That's the one that I have. I like it. But of course, enjoy it responsibly. Not like Matthias did. I wouldn't call that responsibly. But we love Matthias. Nick, Texas, 9-1 overall, 6-1 in the Big 12, coming to town. And they, I wouldn't say are limping into this game because they're unblemished since their loss to Oklahoma, but they aren't exactly playing their best football, especially in the fourth quarter. Almost blew that one to K-State, took it to overtime, and then got outscored and screwed up the cover against TCU last week, which I wasn't very happy about for a number of reasons. Jonathan Brooks out for the year. They're running back with a torn ACL. And Quinn Ewers did play last week. Looked decent. 22-33, 317 yards at the touchdown and a pick. I'll start. This is a horrible matchup for Iowa State. There's no way around it. Texas is a lead in the trenches. The spot where I'll give them credit. They looked good against BYU in the trenches. But if I had to pick an area on both sides of the ball where Iowa State has struggled this year, it's in the trenches. So how, from an X's and O's standpoint, do you make up for that? It'll be an interesting game plan from Matt Campbell, Nate Scheelhaase, and John Haycock on how they do that. And they've also got the skill guys. So not only can you just focus on stopping the run, you've got to be able to stop the run, which I think they should be able to do to an extent. I'm pretty confident that Nate Scheelhaase could stop the run against really anybody in the conference. More importantly, they've got to get a little bit of pressure on Quinn Ewers because it doesn't matter how good TJ Tampa is. He's incredible. One of the best cover guys in the country.
He really
is. If you give
Ewers
3, 4, 5 seconds, Xavier Worthy will still find a way to get open. Maybe not every play, but all it takes is 2 or 3 plays a game. So Iowa State's going to have to find a way to muster up some pressure, whether it's from the 3 down front, whether it's from the linebackers, Zach Lovett. They've got to find a way or else it could be a really long day for Iowa State.
And, you mentioned Worthy, and you've got A.D. Mitchell in this kind of rundown as well. I think that he is actually maybe even a bit of a tougher cover, just based on kind of his success. Obviously, the Georgia transfer. I think you make a really good point, Jake, because Texas, to me, early on, was this dominant team in the trenches. Like you mentioned, they certainly showed that against Bama. And now I think 9-1 Bama team. Texas is pretty loaded on defense. I like their front. I do think they're going to miss Jonathan Brooks.
Totally.
He's been very special, and I think that's why I would kind of agree with you that, Haycock and that defense might be able to make some things tougher against the run. I do know that it's still a very deep running back room. They've got, I want to say, a 5-star and a 4-star guy in there. So they're still going to have some talent. I think Ewers was solid last week. I don't think that he looked as sharp as he did earlier in the season. Now, that could just be coming back from injury. 66% completion percentage. That's not terrible. Certainly not in college. 317 yards. The pick, that's going to hurt you in a game like Iowa State because as we kind of saw quickly and early against BYU, the Cyclones can take advantage a little bit. I think it helps that Iowa State's offense seems to be clicking right now. And I think that spread, I believe it opened at 7.5 points for an underdog for Iowa State. It's actually been going toward Texas. I know we're going to get to picks in a little bit, but I initially felt like that was a little high, quite honestly. I think that this is a game that while it'd be tough to pick against the Longhorns, I do think specifically with it being a night game at the Jack, it's a winnable game for Iowa State.
It's definitely a winnable game. And I just touched on the X's and O's standpoint where it's not very favorable, really in a lot of ways for Iowa State because especially if they can't run the ball, which is a very good possibility. I guess, where do you win? And I think that it comes way more from the psychology side. Texas still playing for a national championship, not just a Big 12 championship, a national championship. If they win the Big 12, I'd probably say there's a 60-40 shot that they make the college football playoff. So
I think it's even higher than that.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that can happen. They've obviously got the head-to-head over Alabama. But either way, everything is still on the table for Texas, which in a way is a bad thing for Iowa State, because in the past we've seen a lot of Texas teams that maybe after they lose out on that hope of making a playoff, making a Big 12 championship, kind of just give up. And that's what we saw happen in 2021. But on the other side, it's a team playing with a lot of pressure and playing with everything to lose. Where in my opinion, Iowa State, I don't know if this will happen, but they should be playing with nothing to lose. This is a young team that has overcome a lot. They've made a bowl. They've exceeded expectations. You go out and lose by 13 to Texas, I don't really think anybody in this fan base, anybody in that program will feel differently about them as a team. You go out there, give Texas a game, you win. You go out there, give Texas a game, maybe be up in the fourth quarter, have it a tie game in the fourth quarter. Who knows what can happen with that crowd in a night game. Again, with Texas, a team that hasn't won a Big 12 championship since 2009, not because of a lack of talent. Let me tell you that much. It's not at all because of a lack of a talent. It's a lack of everything else. I know Texas is good. We still have not seen them be back yet. Iowa State could be a reason that they stay not back.
I do think that this team is a little bit different than previous. I know that
Totally.
That's not a huge
100%.
reach, obviously. But yeah, I think that, the talent feels a little, I guess, first the team feels more talent laden. I do think it's at a different level. I think they've got NFL guys. I can think of 6 spots just on offense, certainly. I think that while I'm still not sure what Sark is capable of in terms of in-game coaching, it does feel like the leadership on this team's a little better and a little more concrete than we have seen. I think you make some really good points, Jake, and that's why, like I just mentioned, and we'll get into the picks, why I think it's very winnable for Iowa State. I think, to me, I'm actually less concerned about the defense, believe it or not, because Ewers isn't fully healthy, because Brooks is not there. They've got Iowa State as a top, 4 or 5 corner in the country. I'm actually really curious how the offense kind of continues this consistency that we've shown, that we've seen 2 out of the last 3 weeks, because Texas's defense, at least early on, it seemed like one of the best units in the country. They've had kind of some poor fourth quarters the last couple of weeks, so we'll see what travels. But that, to me, is really going to decide this one Saturday night.
I'll tell you what the key to that is. It's not coming out like you did against Kansas. You are not going to win in the trenches against Texas. It's that simple. You're going to have to be aggressive. And I think Bloom was totally on this on Williams and Bloom on Cyclone Fanatic on Sunday. This is the game. If you've got them, use them. If you've got the trick plays, if you've got anything that's not on film yet, you use it. Because for me, I've got a very simple game plan. You get to 24 points. I don't care how you do it. I don't care if it's a punt return, a flea flicker, couple out routes to Jalen Knoll. You get to 24 points, win the margins, don't turn it over, no pick sixes, no blocked field goals, no muffed punts, and then you just trust John Haycock. If you score 24 points and Texas just goes out and executes on offense, plays great, scores 30 points, you tip your cap.
Yep, that's fair.
You let them beat you at your strength. Do not go out give them a pick six. Don't hand them 7 points. Don't go out, run the ball 3 times up the middle on the first drive, and punt. If you go out there, you throw a couple times incomplete and punt, fine. You got to get out to a decent start, and you have to score 24 points. If you lose 27-24, you tip your cap to him, but you just got to let the professor profess. He's done it time and time again in these big games, and that's why 2 weeks later I still tip my cap to Kansas, because they went out and they beat the Iowa State defense. Lance Leipold won that battle over John Haycock. That is my very simple key to victory Saturday. And let me tell you, that is going to be a lot harder than it sounds. Iowa State has yet to beat a team like Texas or even close to Texas. The last time they played an opponent similar to this, it was at Oklahoma. They lost by 30. Again, the team's grown immensely since then, but they still have to prove that they can punch at this weight class.
Now, I'll make this quick because I know we've got our picks and you want to touch on hoops a little bit. But to me, this is important because from afar, it seems like all the buzz and all the juice is back with this football team. I think a little bit fell out with the fan base after the Kansas game. So I'm going to play devil's advocate here briefly, Jake. And I don't disagree with you. But for the sake of discussion, do you still feel you need to establish the run in a game like this? Because of how good. Wait, just let me tell you. Let me tell you. Some of those running backs have looked, and B, to keep Texas's offense off the field.
No and no. I'm not against establishing the run. I'm against establishing the run by just establishing the run. Use the short passing game to establish the run. You look Saturday, Iowa State established the run, but they didn't do it by, obviously they got a short field off the interception, but they didn't just go out there, run 3 times and assert their dominance on the offensive line. There were still a couple run plays blown up before really that run game exploded. It was because they were hitting Jalen Knoll, they were hitting Ben Bramer down the field, that the offensive line the BYU defense was forced to spread out around the field, less guys in the box, easier to run. That is how you beat Texas. You cannot go out there and run the first play of the game or the second play of the game. Like, you've just got to go out all guns blazing. And now it's different if maybe Texas gets the ball first, 3 and out, turnover. Obviously, but if you get the opening kickoff, you cannot give Texas the ball back. There's no difference between giving Texas the ball back with 13 and 14 minutes if they're going to score. It doesn't matter. So you just got to go out there, use the short passing game, be aggressive, play like the underdog.
No and no. He made it simple for me. I think that's fair. I don't maybe feel quite as strongly. I think I just have a little bit of kind of confidence from what I've seen in the run game a little bit, but totally get what you're saying. Let's get into some picks a little bit. And if I recall correctly, did Jake have a 2-1 week after trying to go the opposite of what would be good this week?
Yeah, I tried to go 0-3, went 2-1. And I'm going to go like 2.5-1 because I didn't take the Texas Tech +4, but I did warn you about it. So I'm going to take some of that credit right there. I know I had my wait. Before we get into picks, I do want to share, I think, the funniest message from that night in the group chat. And it was from me. So this was
from me.
So Iowa State was up 10-0. I mean, they were gifted 10-0. And then BYU went right down the field. Iowa State couldn't tackle. I don't think they made a single tackle that drive. BYU scored like it was nothing. And then I said at 9:49 p.m., this one is over. Thanks for coming out. Boy, was I wrong. And then I said, can't believe I got BYU live at plus 360 free money. So, Cyclones after dark. We'll just leave it at that. And of course, I got that BYU live 360 on Circa Sports Iowa.
You were funny, man. You were funny.
Our great friends and one of our sponsors. You can get their app on the App Store. You can go to circasports.com. The highest limits, the lowest holds, the best odds, even when it doesn't hit, like plus 360 BYU live money line. Download the app today. And I know that's where I'm making my picks for the Big 12 this week. 2-1 week. I'm back to 14-21-1. I'm looking like the Green Bay Packers out here, floating a little below 500, or maybe a ways below 500. My first pick, I'm just going to say I don't feel good about any of my picks this week. This is a really tough week to do.
I love your second pick. But
I'm taking
keep going.
I'm taking West Virginia minus 6.5 against Cincinnati. Cincinnati finally got half of a Big 12 win. I mean, you beat an American team. Who really cares? You still got to prove it against a Big 12 team. I don't think they will. West Virginia's been playing some good football. Obviously not last week. A trip to Norman in a night game is a death sentence. But blew out a measly BYU team the week before at home. I think they do it again to Cincinnati. If I'm feeling good, I might alternate this one up to like 9.5 or something like that. Buy some points or sell some points would probably be the
that would
term.
Yep. Yeah, I love that pick. You know, I'm not shy about giving you some credit on these. As one I considered, this is my favorite pick that I'm making. I got TCU minus 14 at home, and I might play this one against Baylor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that TCU showed me something late against Texas. We have established, and credit to you, you said early on Baylor stinks. They do stink. That feels like a team that has laid down for the season. We'll see what happens kind of with the coaching staff there.
It doesn't, let me cut you off. It doesn't sound like they have. Like Dave Aranda said that in a press conference. He said that the locker room is broken, which I don't know the last time I've heard a head coach come out and say that. That's a bad look, and I do not hate this play at all.
Yeah, and then I just wanted to add, TCU remarkably, after all the hype and a national championship berth season, they still need to win out to make a bowl.
That's crazy.
So that is why I feel so good about this pick.
It's the revivalry. I'm not calling it the Blue Bonnet or the Blue Bunny Bowl, whatever they call it. I think it's the revivalry. That's a good nickname. What was it? Blue Bonnet? Did you see that?
Producer might know. I do not know that one.
Aiden, welcome to the show.
I believe it's the Blue Bonnet rivalry now.
Yes, it's something stupid. I'm not calling it
And
that.
the trophy looks like it was made by a high schooler or something.
Probably was made by high schoolers. Gosh, all that oil money down there, and still you come up with a trophy that looks like it was made in Marshalltown. But with all due respect to Marshalltown, they've got some great restaurants up there. My next pick, I'm taking the under in Texas, Iowa State, which is where I'm going to make my pick. 47.5 is the point.
Will you be at this one?
I will not. I believe I'll be at Kinnick for Iowa, Illinois at 2:30. After the game, though, after I get all my editing and all that stuff done, I'll go over to my lovely grandparents and watch the game on their flat screen TV. But I'm taking 47.5 points under that. I just think this is going to be maybe a bit of an offensive struggle for Iowa State. Of course, the Texas offense looked a little dicey at points last week. I'm actually... You know what? Screw it. I was gonna pick Iowa State to lose, but I've already died on the hill of Texas not winning a Big 12 championship. I might as well just get brutally murdered on that hill. I'm gonna take Iowa State 24-21. And if I'm wrong, it doesn't matter because I've been wrong a lot this year. If I'm right, though, my parlay of Texas beating Alabama and losing to Iowa State would look real good.
That'd be one we'd maybe have to bring back. I guess I'll just go with that same game here because I had it for my third pick. Cyclones +9. Iowa State playing very solid football. Might be decent out during the day, but obviously it gets colder late. Coming from the Longhorns in Texas. Night game at the Jack. That's what I'm feeling there, Jake.
We'll go with a rivalry game for my third pick. And none of this is based on X's and O's. This is all just based on how KU has played in big games this year. I'm going to take the over of 56.5. And trust me, I know that it's risky with the health of Jason Bean. I still just think that we look back, this is one of those games that is like 37-30 or something like that. A lot of Big 12 rivalry games end up in that high scoring range. I'm just going to blindly bank off of that, and I'm going to take KU K-State over 56.5 points.
Wow. I like it. I wouldn't play it, but I like it. Oklahoma State -7 at Houston. I sent in the group chat Saturday. I said, I've been working all day. Is this Oklahoma State score legitimate? I could not believe how badly they got blown out. I think that they're going to finish on a semi-high note these last couple weeks. I'm taking the Cowboys on the road, get myself back above 500. But still, 15.
Those guys, that team's an enigma. I can't figure them out. For me, I think they've fallen into my Texas Tech tier of the Big 12 of no matter what, I just can't bet them. You just don't know. You lose by that much to Central Florida. I mean, that school used to be called Florida Tech or something like that. Maybe Central Florida Community College. You lose by that much, man. And they still have a very inside track to the Big 12 championship, as crazy as that sounds.
Oh, yeah.
There's a chance that happens. But let's finish out with some hoops in the Channel Seed studios. Iowa State caps off a 3-0 week over Cupcake State University, Tortilla Tech, and some other school. I think Firewood, Lindenwood, maybe. You didn't play anybody.
Yeah.
You didn't play anybody. I'm ready for some real competition, but we are not that far removed from Iowa State having to grind out wins against teams like this in the aughts era. So that's what I think you can take from this. None of this will play any sort of factor in March. Obviously, 1 with resume, 2 with how you're going to play. These weren't high-pressure games or anything like that. But what you can't take away is scoring 100 points when 2 years ago you scored 49 in one of these games, I believe. So it's a pretty good measuring stick for how the offense is quite a bit better than what we've seen the last 2 years in Ames. And the defense has stayed the same. Let me add that.
Yeah, I'm ready for just to watch from afar and for the show. Some real competition will be had next week, and it's unbelievable that we're already this close to Thanksgiving and some of the holidays. What I think you can take away most, I didn't even need to write it down. I was just thinking essentially there are different ways for this team to beat you offensively this year. I think that's the biggest thing because we know how high I've been on this team. I projected them to go far. I'm surprised they're not getting some more national love. I know that they're
hope they don't.
Going to
keep
creep
them
up
under the radar
in the top 25 soon. We'll see how next week goes, but that's kind of what I've taken away. I mean, the defense should stay for the most part. the intensity is certainly there, and obviously I very much trust that staff. So I think just the way it can be Milan one night, Lipsy from three another. Trey King was obviously heavily featured this last game. I do still want to see, more consistency from maybe some of the depth guys coming off the bench. But again, even with them, it's been somebody kind of adding to the scoring different nights, like Rob Jones, Curtis Jones. So it's going to be intriguing, Jake. I'm excited to really just see what they can do next week, because Iowa State has looked terrific so far, but against those teams, that is pretty expected. They were, I think, 33.5-point favorites in one of those games.
Yeah, I'm still waiting to see how they look down there in Florida at the ESPN Invitational, how they look against Iowa before getting into Big 12 play. But you contrast, last year, the game plan, especially in credit to them, they did it, that January win stretch. It's just, okay, hope that Holmes, Kalsher, or Grill goes for 22 points. Like, that was really the only way they were ever going to win one of those games. From what I've seen through 3 games, the offense is more dynamic than that this year. And it's not just going to be, well, hope Milan goes for 7 threes tonight or else they've got no shot, just because you have Keyshawn Gilbert getting to the line. You've got Lipsy, who looks like he's taken a step up, not just with his shooting. Athletically, he looks quicker. He looks more in control. I just think there's a lot more to this offense than there has been the last 2 seasons, and Ken Pom has reflected that. I think they were up to 56 in adjusted offense and remain at number 3 in adjusted defense. And I'm just gonna come out and say I genuinely think that this is one of the top 10 or 15 best teams in the country. I know that sounds like an overreaction to watching 3 games. I thought that before the season, before I saw any of them on the floor. My concern, you bring in talent, not that the last 2 teams weren't talented, but you bring in younger talent, guys that required some money in the portal. There might be more entitlement involved with that than what you had the last 2 years. The last 2 seasons, it was, you've got to play one way or you're not winning games. You've got to just ugly it up. You've got to play dirty basketball. Sorry, not like cheap shots, but you just got to play not fun basketball if you want to be successful. And that's what they did. Hats off to them. This year, the concern was, well, if they don't have to play that way, maybe they won't. It seems like the defense has maybe even taken a step up, because you still have guys giving 100% effort, and they're more gifted athletically. They're deeper. You're bringing guys off the bench 4 or 5 deep, playing 6-minute spurts. They can just go balls to the walls for 6 minutes, get subbed out, get some water in them, come back out and do it again. Whereas last year, you're limited to 7 guys, really. And that's the biggest change. And good friend Dylan Kuhn of Wide Right Natty Light, Cyclone Fanatic, sent a stat this morning. Iowa State has forced more turnovers this year than they've allowed opponents field goals. You do it against playing against NAIA schools, but still, that's crazy.
That's an incredible stat. And again, to me, top 15, 20 range, I think feels very, very appropriate right now, with the chance to get higher.
Yeah, sorry, that was more projecting for the end of the season.
Yeah, I think next week and then January are really going to tell me, a lot about this team, because it seems like some of the top teams in the Big 12 are going to be maybe as good as we expected, but I think Iowa State could find themselves somewhere in that mix. I do.
Yeah,
loaded show today, Jake.
They're going to have a shot to be in that second tier of the Big 12, below Kansas and Houston, I think. I've just got to be proven otherwise for any other team. I guess maybe Baylor. I've got to be proven for any other team to get into that tier. Well, Mr. Wyatt, you got anything to add? Plus 200 on yes.
No.
Cash my bet. All right. Yeah, Nick, enjoy your game out. Is it Wisconsin, Rhode Island, did you say?
Providence.
Gosh, I'm dumb.
Providence, yeah. No, you're not. I'll be out in Rhode Island, but no, it's a big game actually. Part of the Gavitt games. We were talking before the show, both huge on college hoops. It's a good night tonight, my friend. I can't wait.
Yeah. Well, enjoy. We will be back next week, and we're going to see if we're digging out receipts or if I'm dead on a hill. Of course, thanks to Heartland Flags and Gifts, Circus Sports Iowa, Steeple Ridge Bourbon. We're in the Channel Seed Studios. This